Tansei, I'm Chris Nachkate. Welcome to your special weekend wrap-up edition of APTN National News. First Nations leaders were in Ottawa this past week for the Assembly of First Nations winter meeting. Last Tuesday was the first day of the Assembly, and judging by the discussion on the floor, it appears the Carney government's energy pipeline memorandum of understanding signed with Alberta last week, the previous week, didn't go over well. APTN's Fraser Needham reports.
Thank you.
In her keynote speech Tuesday morning, AFN National Chief Cindy Woodhouse-Nepenak took direct aim at the Ottawa-Alberta MOU.
On the weekend, we saw a national report on the Alberta-Canada MOU state categorically that the mantra of free, prior and informed consent from Indigenous communities is gone, as if First Nations rights can be wiped away with one federal-provincial MOU. It was difficult to watch BC and many First Nations excluded from these discussions, particularly on the Pacific Coast.
She followed this up by saying if the Carney government plans to make Canada a worldwide energy leader, it will need to change its current approach to development projects that involve First Nations.
Over $600 billion of projects are forecast to be launched on our traditional lands over the next decade. The potential benefits are in the trillions of dollars, but they won't advance without First Nation support. Until an appropriate development process is established and founded in free, prior and informed consent, the Crown's constitutional legal obligations will not be met. This is the law, and it can't be wished away.
The MOU is signed without input from the British Columbia government or coastal First Nations. It opens the door to a number of legislative changes for a proposed pipeline from Alberta to the west coast, including lifting a long-held oil taker ban in the area. This doesn't sit right with the old Masset Village Council from Haida Gwaii, which put forward an emergency resolution against the proposed pipeline.
The Oil Tanker Moratorium Act is vital legislation as a result of over 50-year moratorium that is a result of recognized BC North and Central Coast are some of the most dangerous waters in the world. An oil spill in the area is not an if, it is when.
Late Tuesday afternoon, the Prime Minister himself addressed the Assembly. He said earlier in the new year, the government will be hosting a joint federal, provincial, territorial First Ministers meeting with First Nations. And the Liberals will also introduce First Nations clean water legislation in the spring, originally promised this fall. Carney also said projects like the proposed pipeline must be seen as a beginning and not an end. During the question and answer, Neskantaga First Nation Chief Gary Cuisis took the Prime Minister to task for failing to lift a boil water advisory in his community for over 3 decades.
And hearing you comments that you've been lifting boil water advisories in Canada, but I don't know which part of country you're talking about that's water is being lifted, but our community hasn't been lifted for 30 years.
In his answer, Carney admitted the government had failed the community.
And that's a failure, to be absolutely clear. You know it's a failure. You've lived through it most of your adult life. It's a failure of execution, and this is one of the things that this government is very focused on, is setting objectives, being clear about the objectives, determining why things have not worked as well as they should.
Carney stopped the Q&A before all chiefs could speak, upsetting Cold Lake First Nation Chief Kelsey Jacko.
Chief Jacko, please. We understand.
Assembly enters its second day on Wednesday. Fraser Needham, APTN National News, Ottawa.
Staying with the AFN, some First Nations also felt they do not have a seat at the table with the federal government, including with the AFN. Frustration towards both parties was evident at the AFN's special chiefs meeting. However, 3 chiefs representing Treaties 6, 7, and 8 had a closed-door meeting with the Prime Minister. APTN's Savannah Craig reports.
Prime Minister Mark Carney signed a memorandum of understanding with Alberta Premier Danielle Smith 1 week ago. Some First Nations governments are feeling left out of the equation. Now, some chiefs are finally getting a seat at the table.
There was a few things that were talked about, the pipeline, the MOU between the federal government and Alberta, the water issue.
Chief Vernon Watchmaker was one of the 3 chiefs who were invited to the closed-door meeting with Prime Minister Carney late Wednesday afternoon.
It's been a tough one because we heard many times before the good working together, working more closely with the First Nations, and nothing really came of it. But what we're looking for is that in good faith, like it says in a treaty, in good faith, that we work with you.
But some chiefs still haven't had the chance to speak with Prime Minister Carney.
Chief Jacko, please. We understand.
Frustration over the inability to share concerns with the Prime Minister, a similar sentiment other chiefs have had.
I'm sorry, Chief Diabo. Chief Tamara?
He gets 20 minutes, but we get 2.
Many say they've traveled long,
I come many miles.
waiting for their chance to speak with Prime Minister Mark Carney after radio silence.
We talk about nation to nation. Nobody speaks for my nation but me. My people put me here. I have unanswered questions, and Prime Minister, you told me you're going to come to my territory.
Including Cold Lake First Nation Chief Kelsey Jacko, who was not invited to the Prime Minister's closed-door meeting.
When the Prime Minister says talk to nation, I expect to have a conversation with him. I have unanswered emails going to him. He told me he is going to come to my territory 3 times, and it just seems like every time I'm trying to have a conversation with him, I have to fight just to say some words.
With a divisive pipeline project on the table, some First Nations see it as a pivotal time to have their voices heard.
They're going to be building a 400-kilometer pipeline, and they're going to be storing it in my backyard. And, we're not going to go anywhere, and, we're going to have to deal with it for 100 years to come. Right?
The concern extends to how the sharing of resources will benefit their communities.
We agreed to share this land with you. It also means we shared the resources.
A lot of money just goes to the municipalities back for us, like right next door to us, goes to the cities, go to the provinces, and we're left out of the equation. So we're in a housing crisis. We have needs too.
For some chiefs in Treaty 6, 7, and 8, they're also being unheard at the Assembly of First Nations.
We come to this assembly and you guys say it's our meeting. We're still under the colonial approach where you guys control the mics.
First Nations in Alberta haven't had regional representation at the AFN since 2021.
Treaty 8 had decided to pull out of the AFN, and so Treaty 6 and 7 did not want to make a decision in regards to the replacement of the regional chief. But that's been since some time ago, but it hasn't really been brought to the forefront.
Chief Watchmaker says he hopes the issue will be addressed at the next Assembly of Treaty Chiefs, a quarterly meeting between Treaty 6, 7, and 8 in Alberta. Savannah Craig, APTN National News, Ottawa.
The fight against TB continues in the north. Justin Hardy will have that story right after the break. Stay with us. Welcome back. The territory of Nunavut says they are making progress toward eliminating tuberculosis by 2030, and a new drug can make treating the disease even faster. But as Justin Hardy tells us, one of the biggest hurdles in eradicating the disease is actually the stigma surrounding it.
In 2025, Nunavut had 4 ongoing tuberculosis outbreaks. Those in Pengnirtung and Pond Inlet were declared over earlier this year, according to the Department of Health. The 2 others in Arviat and Nariat are considered under control, according to Nunavut's Chief Medical Officer of Health, Dr. Ekwa Ejimang.
Those who had the active TB disease, who were infectious and could be spreading it, we've identified most of them and treated them. And we are screening for people with sleeping TB to also treat so that they don't get TB in the future.
Ejimang says that there are a number of factors contributing to the spread of TB in Nunavut communities, from overcrowding to food access. But she says one of the biggest issues is the stigma surrounding the disease and the fear of even getting tested.
Because of the historical, trauma of TB sanatoriums, where the ships will come around and people were asked to get on and didn't get a chance to say goodbye, so we're just taken away to TB sanatorium down south, and so unfortunately some people never return. that stigma and fear is still very real. And so what we are doing now is trying to get identify TB early, because once the infection is identified early, it can be treated in community and people don't have to leave.
A new drug may assist Nunavut in eliminating TB. A second phase clinical trial of sorfequilin shows that a regimen including the drug could help reduce treatment time to about 15 weeks. Normal treatment of active tuberculosis could take anywhere from 6 to 9 months, and latent sleeping TB could take 3 to 9 months to treat. Ejimong says that any drug that reduces treatment time is a game changer, but the other biggest factor in successful treatment is avoiding reinfection.
It's not even just about finishing treatment and it's done, but then the determinants of health that would make another person who has just completed treatment be infected again with TB in the next year. Those are the things we really need to be working towards.
Nunavummiut experiencing coughs for more than 2 weeks, fever and night sweats, loss of appetite or weight loss, coughing up blood, or being more tired than usual are encouraged to get tested at no cost at their local health center. Justin Hardy, APTN National News, Iqaluit.
Thank you, Justin. So Norway House Cree Nation in northern Manitoba now, where we recently got a tour of the new state-of-the-art hospital that leadership advocated for more than 20 years. While it opened its doors in October of last year, not all of the departments are fully functional yet. APTN's Tiara Wheatley explains.
The Nanantaway-Weegamik Center of Excellence opened its doors over a year ago, but behind the scenes, leadership continued to build capacity. Councillor Dion Clark says Norway House Cree Nation took the lead in getting this building up, using their own source of revenue and finding creative ways to combine health, education, and employment and training dollars. Only after they did that is when the federal and provincial governments pitched in.
So we worked closely with other major partners and had our own people start building this place. Everything from electricians, the flooring, every facet of this area, the mechanical side of stuff. So, because it's our people will be here to maintain the building and to continue the operation of this building.
It replaced the old hospital built in 1952 that was run by the First Nations and Inuit Health Branch.
Now I understand.
One of the much-needed departments in the Nanantaway-Weegamik Center is the Renal Health Care Unit. Clarice Hutchings has specialized in renal health since 2020. She's often had to educate people about her department.
They think it's just a machine that a nurse just runs, that you slap a patient on and that's it, but it's way a bigger role than that. All the medication, their blood work, their electrolytes, their diet, we have to look at all aspects, and then there's all their other issues that come up. Because there are patients, they can have other illnesses happening, pneumonia, or they could have a diabetic foot ulcer, they could have an eye issue, they could have gastritis where they're vomiting and diarrhea.
In the past 5 years alone, she's seen over 20 people have had to move to Winnipeg for dialysis. She hopes one day soon they can come back home. Currently, the capacity only allows for 8 patients 3 times a week for 4-hour visits. But they are working toward taking on 24 patients. In order to do that, though, they need more staff. Hutchings says her patients tell her they are grateful because they are cared for at home by their own people who are all fluent in the Cree language.
I've only been doing this for 5 years, and I can see a lot of the psychosocial aspects of what the patients go through. And being in the city is not always the best thing. And they tell us, imagine being away from your kids, your grandkids, your grandparents, your aunts and uncles.
There is also an emergency room, primary and inpatient care here as well.
Hi. Hey, Joy.
How's it going? Specialists like this physio doctor and others such as dermatologists, pediatricians, cardiologists, and orthotechnicians come into the community. Beverly Chartrand works with the specialists both on the ground here and through telehealth. Where patients get to have virtual one-on-one time with their doctor.
Some people don't know what telehealth is, but once they find out about it, they like it because instead of driving 8-9 hours out of town to go see a specialist for 15-minute appointments, they like it better because it's a long waiting list to see them in a city, and then they could see them faster here.
So this is a second birthing room.
Another vital part of the Nanantaway-Weegamik Center is the birthing unit. While it's not officially open yet, Loretta Bayer says they continue to build its capacity, including trying to recruit staff and secure funding to pay them.
We have a birthing tub, we have a neonatal resuscitation, and we have 2 birthing rooms. So there's room for the family to spend the time here to support. The system has medicalized birthing for many years, and as a result, we've had to go into confinement. And you know what confinement is? It's almost like being in isolation in jail or something like that, but we have to leave our community for at least a month.
Bayer says the stress on the mothers has often resulted in premature births and other serious conditions, something she and others hope will change with this new hospital and other community initiatives.
We plan on building birth homes or adapting homes to be birth homes to provide a safe place for those individuals who feel threatened, perhaps through family violence or different things like that, to be in a safe, calm place to be able to carry their baby to gestation.
Norway House continues to work with their partners to get this birthing center on the go. They hope to have their birthing model done by the end of the fiscal year. TR Waitley, APTN National News, Norway House Cree Nation.
Thank you, TR. Tina House is up next with a story about residential school denialism in BC. Stay with us. Thanks for staying with us. What started as a peaceful rally in Victoria, BC, erupted into an all-out chaos as residential school survivors, supporters, and students confronted members of the One BC Party who deny traumatic experiences ever happened at residential schools. APTN's Tina House reports.
Close to 1,000 people gathered under the Every Child Matters flag at the University of Victoria, where One BC MLA Dallas Brody and her supporters were trying to hold a speaking event. Brody says residential school trauma never happened and there are no unmarked graves. Her views and word of her event triggered a huge response. A sea of residential school survivors and their supporters showed up to make sure they were here to stop it from happening.
I am the great-granddaughter. I am the granddaughter. I am the child of the Indian you couldn't remove. My people were torn from their families, torn from mothers. And what I can't comprehend is how our survivors are finally being recognized.
Rye Morin gathered statements from survivors for the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. He's one of the organizers of today's anti-rally.
All those people have to do is open their hearts and minds to listen to survivors. All they have to do is just open their ears for 5 brief minutes and they would know that there is no reason why anybody would ever make up the stories that have been shared about what Canada and the churches have done in this country.
And for Steve Sweethall, his whole family attended residential school and the pain is still evident.
And we're separated. You know, I tried to run away. It was a very lonely time, and people have to understand. I think people today's, even our own people, need to understand what that was like for their parents, their grandfathers and grandmothers. So I think it's important that not to relive the pain and open up those wounds, but to just keep educating as much as we can, so we don't have these kind of groups that are forming politically to damage what the truth really is.
And just steps away from the event, Dallas Brody and her supporters, including Francis Widdowson, showed up, despite not being allowed onto campus by officials. According to One BC, Widdowson was arrested for trespassing, but later released.
Yes, she was arrested for doing nothing, for coming to have conversations.
We caught up with One BC Party Chief of Staff Tim Thielman. He was just outside of the rally, and that's when it turned into chaos.
What's this guy's gonna throw a fucking flashbang right there. You retard, right there. Okay. Right there. 2.5 right years to be doing this. Get smashed. What? You smashed.
Are you saying that all the residential school survivors are lying?
I'm saying that there is no evidence that there was 215 children murdered in Kamloops, and anybody that says there is lying. It doesn't matter what color you are, it doesn't matter who your ancestors are. We have a society that has to be based on truth. We require evidence for claims.
Ironically, Thielman was then engulfed in orange smoke. Party supporter Jim McMurtry is a former school teacher. He was fired over comments that he made denying residential school trauma ever happened, and he was prevented from speaking at the event. The 1BC party supporters refused to leave, and in the end, they were escorted off campus by police. Tina House, APTN National News, Victoria.
And staying on that topic, APTN Investigates returns this weekend with an all-new episode. Journalist Christopher Reed looks into a recent eruption of residential school denialism. Fired academic Francis Widdowson has been showing up on university campuses to question aspects of the history of residential schools in Canada. Here's a preview.
Achieving reconciliation, as I observed, is like climbing a mountain. It will not always be easy. There will be storms, there will be obstacles. Our goal is a just one, and it is also necessary for our children.
Canada's Indian residential school era has become a central part of our national identity. The federal policy to kill the Indian in the child has had lasting impacts still being felt to this day. More recently, the discovery of what are believed to be unmarked graves of children has brought the discussion surrounding truth and reconciliation back to the forefront. But there has been an eruption of late of what some academics call residential school denialism.
We're proceeding on the basis of a falsehood. The lie that 215 bodies were found at the Kamloops Indian Residential School. The remains of 215 children have not been confirmed.
We had heard that Francis Widdowson, an alleged denialist, was coming to Winnipeg to speak at local university. During her 2-day visit, we watched the effect her words and presence had on the Indigenous community, and saw that while having to push back against denialism is an unwanted task for knowledge keepers and academics, it's a necessary one at this moment.
And you can watch APTN Investigates Dismantling Denialism in less than a minute's time, so make sure to keep it locked here. And that's your weekend wrap-up edition of APTN National News from our HQ in downtown Winnipeg. Hi, miigwech masicho. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you again on Monday. Ekse.